Who do you think is the most well prepped to sneak in and take fourth then with a couple of good acquisitions, Pat?
Ooh, I think that Spurs and Arsenal are in reasonably similar situations. You know, like Spurs need a couple of acquisitions at the back to sort them out. Arsenal probably, if they got in a deeper midfielder and an attacking midfielder, you'd feel pretty confident about them. I mean, Leicester as well, it's possible, but we just sort of assume that Vardy's going to drop off at some point. I think the thing is, I look at Spurs and I think midfield is sorted, front line is pretty good. Like certainly the at least three of your front four are excellent. But it's just whether Mourinho can rebuild that back line on the fly. So I don't know. I mean, anyone can get hot for a season and do it. And certainly with Arsenal, you know, you'd say that there are players like Tierney, like Pepe, who they didn't really see the best of last year. And so you can kind of dream a little bit on those guys. Similarly, Leicester can look at their squad and say, some of these people are approaching the point where we would expect them to make a leap forward. Like Maddison is now at the age where you'd expect him to make a leap forward because he's hitting his peak. That's what you'd expect from him. And so Leicester, except for the loss of Chilwell, you'd say they were in a pretty good position. Though, of course, at some point, you know, Vardy isn't going to score 20 goals in a season. I don't know.
I disagree. I think Leicester are below Spurs in terms of sneaking into that top four, and it pains me to say that, man. But there is an awful lot of responsibility on James Maddison's shoulders. Next campaign, if significant firepower isn't added to that side, and they haven't even resolved the fullback position yet, and I remain very unconvinced by Timothy Castagna at £18 million. I think Atalanta will have pulled a fast one over Leicester if they can get rid of a perfectly serviceable fullback who can play on the right or left, right, who's played on the right hand side of midfield as well in sort of a 3-4-3. But I mean, he was acquired for under 10 and has just been on the peripheries. Like, he's not Champions League like starting quality fullback. So I think Leicester would have downgraded in that area. I mean, his pressures aren't as good as Chilwell's or Pereira's, although Pereira's are exceptional. I think around 20 per 90. I think they already needed to upgrade Perez. There's a danger of letting Iheanacho go. I think this is where Rodgers and Lee Congerton have struggled in seasons gone by to like build on an excellent season with long-term like transfer strategy.
Especially as he's not an out-and-out left-back as well. It just seems like quite a strange addition for me.
I just don't... Yeah, but I think if that's the timing, though. Like, it might not be that they were thinking about him with the Chilwell vacancy in mind at all, and it's just that the Chilwell vacancy makes it look weird. Like, who knows? We might see them... They
could bring in Goossens as well. There's talk of that.
Well, you could imagine also a season in which they say, right, Castagna's going to play right back, and ahead of him playing on the right wing, we're going to play Ricardo Pereira, because he will give him some defensive cover, and he does have that outstanding attacking ability, and he does have the ability to lead the press as well. Like, I mean, I agree. I think for the money they're paying for Castagna, it seems to be kind of what Arsenal are paying for Gabriel, which seems like quite a lot. But also, you know, they might have a tactical reason in mind, and maybe they do go out and get a very good left back over the back half of the window. I don't want to necessarily jump to conclusions and say, like, God, I can't believe they've replaced Chilwell with this subpar Atalanta fullback, because I don't actually know if that's their plan yet. And, you know, Brendan Rodgers, I've been a critic of his when it comes to recruitment, because I think historically he's terrible at it. But I think he's a very good coach, and he knows how he wants his team to work. And so with that in mind, maybe he has a plan for Castagna that I'm not aware of yet. And so I kind of want to give him the benefit of the doubt in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, we can only, like, it's hard to factor in those sort of things, isn't it? And I agree in the sense that he's an excellent coach, and he is good at raising the performance levels of individuals to kind of maintain pace with better sides. Like, he's good at making up that talent deficit with his coaching, but, like, I've got to judge it on the numbers we've got in front of us at the moment. And Castagna, 1 goal, 2 assists in an Atlanta side, which were just free scoring, you know, averaging over 2.8 goals at various points of the season. 3 tackles and interceptions. Well, less than that, 2.7 is pretty bog standard for a fullback who's given as much license to kind of break rank as fullbacks are in a day are. Less than 1 shot, 1.1 key passes. It's just, for me, it's not horrific, but it's a downgrade, which is what I'll say. And I feel like it's Leicester like being pragmatic, being realistic, which also means that, you know, probably another season of fighting for Europa League football. I just think that losing that Champions League berth in 6 wins from the what was it, last 22 games of the season or
crazy something like that, yeah,
something like that has probably just set them back 3 or 4 years. Again, hard to actually elaborate on what I mean. Let's discuss Spurs then for a little bit, Doogie, because there's a great stat in there about only Manchester United, City and Liverpool picking up more points in Mourinho's 26 league games.
Yeah, absolutely. And Spurs fans love to bring it up as well. All over the podcast that me and Pat did about how to fix Spurs, it was you guys are ruling out Mourinho, etc. And, he did have some difficulties last campaign, vis-a-vis injuries, etc. Didn't particularly like the way he publicly spoke about Ndombele, but I think what you get, having watched a few episodes of the All or Nothing documentary, I should say, is that Mourinho's really just given up pretending to be a nice guy to the media, but he's actually quite different behind the scenes, or at least wants to portray himself as quite different behind the scenes when the cameras are rolling, at least. And he just seemingly doesn't care about this charm offensive that he used to do in the sort of 2004-05 time at Chelsea with the media. And their form after lockdown was decidedly mixed, so it's quite difficult to get a really good idea. I thought they actually were really poor against Arsenal, but managed to beat them 2-1. They absolutely thrashed Leicester, who were falling apart 3-0. But then there was that game against Bournemouth where they didn't get a single shot on target and drew 0-0 against the Bournemouth side that then went on to concede 4 or 5 to Newcastle. So you couldn't really get a sense of where they were at really. But I do actually quite like their summer business. I think Matt Doherty is such a Mourinho signing. In that you even saw it in the documentary. He's saying when he's talking about Wolves, he's like, Doherty, aggressive, never loses first or second balls. And in that documentary, you really actually saw how basic sometimes Mourinho is with the way he sets up a team, or the way he talks to his players at least. All about first and second balls, all about aggression. Doherty, I think, is a good replacement for Serge Aurier. I'll probably start him ahead of him, or keep him in there. What I wouldn't do is sell Serge Aurier as well, having sold Kyle Walker-Peters, because I think that again leaves you really short at right back, which is turning into a bit of a problem position for Spurs, really, since they got rid of Trippier. And then Pierre-Emile Højbjerg, I think we all know, we've been talking about quite a while, very solid Premier League performer, pretty good at everything, over 4 tackles and interceptions per game, 4 years of Premier League experience, a reasonable presser, very good, a reasonable dribbler as well. I think he looked ready for a move to a club competing for European football. I think that's a good addition. And suddenly, the makings of a very good midfield and attack are kind of there with Højbjerg and Lo Celso, or Højbjerg and Ndombele. Ndombele looks like he could leave. Playing behind, a Son, an Ali, a Bergwijn, or a Lucas Moura, and a Kane. And I still think they need more depth at the striking position. But I think that's actually quite a reasonably good midfield and attack. And I can actually see Spurs, if they start reasonably well, finishing 5th. I would like to see them go out and sign a really elite centre-back. I think that would make the massive, massive difference. Because Eric Dyer's got this new contract. He says he wants to play as a centre-back. I'm okay with it. I think he's a good rotation option. But do I want him to play 38 games alongside Davinson Sanchez or Toby Alderweireld? Probably not. They've been linked with Milan Skriniar. I think he'd be an excellent addition, but whether Milan Skriniar would be willing to swap a potential title challenge with Conte for a top 4 race with Spurs is another matter. So another centre-back would be fantastic. And they could also do with some more depth at left-back, and they need to keep hold of Serge Aurier. So I'm quite mixed on Spurs, but I actually think they'll finish 5th ahead of Arsenal.
Ooh, right, that brings us to Arsenal then, the last team we'll discuss before moving on to our relegation candidates. One question I just want to ask you, rather than a broader one about Arsenal's transfers, incomings and outgoings. Pat, would you sell Hector Bellerin if it funded a move for a couple more players?
It depends how far it would fund those moves. Like, I mean, generally speaking, like, I'm pretty unemotional about this sort of stuff, where I think, like, you look, if you get the right offer for a player, you have to be willing to sell them. And Bellerin's actually the rare player who I find that difficult to do with. You know, like, I find it, the prospect of him leaving, I find genuinely sad. And it's not like, you know, when Cesc left for Barcelona when they were the best side in the world and they were his childhood club, you know, and they paid what was a fortune at the time for him. Like, for Hector Bellerin, it seems like it would be kind of 35 to 40 mil, which I don't think is outstanding money. Like, I mean, it's good money, but it's not, like, amazing. And I think he does bring a lot of value to the club. But I mean, look, if you sell him and you're happy with Maitland-Niles and Cedric as right back options, which I think are totally fine, and you can turn it into, say, add 15 mil to it and turn it into Aouar, I think it's quite hard to argue that wouldn't be the right thing to do when it comes to making the side better. Like, that would make the side better, objectively speaking. If you sell him and then you turn it into Thomas Partey, I'm a bit less convinced. I think Aouar is a better target for us than Partey. So yeah, I don't know. I find it quite sad, but at the same time, like, everybody around the club seems to have the same attitude to it, which is Bellerin kind of says, look, if an offer's made and it works for the club and it works for me, then, like, I'm willing to consider it. And the club are kind of like, well, we don't want to sell you, but if somebody makes a great offer and you want to leave, we'll talk about it. And so everyone's being very amicable about it, which is quite nice. It's not like he's agitating for a move, so I don't think he'll mind whether he stays or goes, in a way. But yeah, I do find the prospect of him going quite sad, because I think that he, despite, you know, not being London born, like, he does actually seem to have a very strong connection to the area and to the club, and I think helps the fans to connect to the club, and so it would be sad from that point of view.
Yeah, I suppose it might soften the blow that it would be Maitland-Niles that was also taking his position, right? Who's come through the youth ranks, very similar journey. He's kind of ducked in and out of the side. He seems to have proved a lot of doubters wrong in the second half of the season, in particular, with his sort of tactical versatility and his positional versatility. So hopefully, you know, that would soften the blow, like I said. But there's that feel-good factor around Arsenal at the moment, isn't there? Where it's hard not to be positive about them following that FA Cup win, following that Community Shield win, following Arteta's record against the bigger sides towards the tail end of the season. I mean, it was quality, wasn't it? Beat Man City, Chelsea, Liverpool twice. So I've actually put them down as 5th place. Now, I want your 3rd, 4th, 5th and 6th, gentlemen. I know this is a little bit premature because we want, and we can revisit this when the transfer window ends. We've already said it's very fine margins. But I'm going to go Chelsea, United, Arsenal, Spurs. Doogie, what are you going for? 3rd, 4th, 5th and 6th?
Yeah, not too much of a change from yours, really. I'm going Chelsea, United, Spurs, Arsenal.
Okay, interesting. Pat, any of it different iterations?
I'll probably go for yours, Chris. I think Chelsea, United, Arsenal, Spurs. But it's such a crapshoot in there. Like, anything could happen between 4th and 7th, really.